we finally are, Sonic Adventure 2. From what I can understand, one of the most highly looked upon Sonic games in the community, although it is pretty hard to find popular consensus on Sonic games nowadays. Now, I personally have played this game many times, and I've had my opinion on it change many times. I remember when I first played it, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Then I played it a bit more and started to think it was pretty overrated. Now though, after having gone back around, as well as having more Sonic games under my belt, this is easily one of my favorite games in the series, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll be going through to not only see how Sonic Adventure 2 greatly improves on the original adventure, but also how it became one of the best of the franchise. Let's get this started. First, let's talk development history. After Sonic Adventure hit the shelves in Japan, everyone pretty much knew a sequel had to happen. During this, though, a few members of Sonic Team ended up flying to San Francisco, which is actually where Sega of America was. They then established Sonic Team USA, with their first project being localizing Sonic Adventure. Later, though, they get the ability to start development on Sonic Adventure 2. I also found something pretty important here. One of the main goals of the development team was to focus on what they thought made Adventure successful and ignore everything else. I personally always find it interesting when game developers think that, since, well, it's exactly that, what they thought made Adventure successful. I mean, we all know the qualities the game has, but we could have been living in a timeline where they thought people were buying Adventure for big, and then SA2 could have had a second serving of fish. God, no. Plus, back then, the only super prevalent form of review material were game magazines, and on top of that, pretty much every console manufacturer had their own magazines trying to sell you on basically whatever they pumped out. Like, Sega Saturn magazine really wanted you to think Sonic R was the second coming of Christ, and apparently other magazines did too, so yeah, you couldn't really always rely on reviews from back then. Thankfully, though, they did start on the right track. They wanted to expand the storytelling from the first adventure, and they thought to do this, they'd need some new characters, and one of the most prevalent was the concept of an evil Sonic. A lot of concepts were thrown around for this guy. He even ended up getting a name before the designs were finalized. This here is Beta Shago, also known as Terios, and if you think Infinite is edgy, then you haven't seen anything yet. There's also another character named Nails, who later became Rouge, although as far as I'm aware, I can't find any Beta Rouge art, which is a little disappointing. The final important development thing is that, since they were set up in San Francisco, a lot of inspiration was taken from there, with it being most noticeable with City Escape's cable cars and Radical Highway's Golden Gate Bridge, although the kart racing tracks do take some notes as well. You know, unrelated entirely, but I wonder if them being based in San Francisco would also inspire Crazy Taxi. Not sure, but it's interesting to think about. Also, another part of development was soap shoes. These things were apparently a thing in real life from the 90s to the 2000s that let you grind on rails. The partnership was because one of the new mechanics introduced in Adventure 2 was rail grinding, which would become a staple mechanic in the series from this point forward. Pretty weird promotional thing, and there's even screenshots of the game taken before the deal with Sonic having his regular shoes, but it's a neat little part of history. I will admit, the shoes Sonic has in this game do look pretty cool, and I was happier than I'd like to admit seeing them come back in forces. With that out of the way, let's talk release. Sonic Adventure 2 was originally released on the Dreamcast in June of 2001. However, just like Sonic Adventure, it got an enhanced port on the GameCube in the form of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which was released in December 2001 in Japan and 2002 everywhere else. Unlike SADX though, which changed graphics, added content, and made some other changes, most of SA2 Battle's changes were for the multiplayer, hence the Battle name, with everything else being left relatively the same, although I'll talk more about some of the changes later too. Once again, SA2 also got a remaster on Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, and Steam in 2012, which despite not changing a ton, does have some notable changes which I'll be talking about later. Although I will note, most of the footage you'll be seeing will be from the Xbox version unless I state otherwise. With that then, let's get into the game proper. Once again, this game leaves a nice impression right off the bat, with a pretty iconic opening cutscene showing again all the characters you'll be playing as, capping off with that iconic shot of Sonic and Shadow passing in front of the moon. so iconic that Sonic Generations even recreated it. A small additional thing too, the new logo not only just looks really clean, but also shows the core focus of the game. While Sonic Adventure's logo had rock outlining the letters to emphasize the past, and water in the letters to show the focus on hydrophobia, Sonic Adventure 2's emphasizes the light versus dark motif, as well as some nice stars since the game does go into space. I know this is some pretty nitpicky stuff that literally nobody other than me cares about, but I just think it was nice. Let's also do a quick dive into presentation, and my god has it gotten an improvement. As for the actual in-game presentation, it's just a general improvement on what Adventure 1 had going, but models just feel ever so slightly more detailed, and also avoid that problem I had before of models looking shiny and plasticky. The main improvement here is the cutscene presentation, as in, they move like actual characters. No more stiff movement, no more weird facial animations, no more poor timing, and no more other weird oddities. It's not going to win any awards, but this is how it should have been from the start, because honestly, if there were 2 games with whatever this was, that would have been embarrassing. As for voice acting, it also seems to be better, but I can't tell if the voices are actually better, or if they're the same and the improved cutscenes and better lines are tricking me into thinking it's a big improvement. Either way, I think everyone does a really good job, and I personally love David Humphrey here as Shadow. We also have one of our first, but certainly not the last, voice actor switch up for the Sonic series, that being for Tails, whose voice actor from SA1 got replaced by his brother for Adventure 2. That must have been an awkward family dinner after that casting was confirmed. I'm kidding, of course, but it's still weird that they change it after only 1 game. Right off the bat here we have an improvement, only 2 stories to play through as opposed to the 6 in the previous game. Thank God. I swear, over 50% of my adventure video was just plot talking. It got pretty tiring. Now, in my original video I took to looking at each story individually since I didn't think they wove into each other really well when trying to combine them into one narrative. And on top of that, there were some stories like Gamma and Big that didn't affect much in the grand scheme of things, so it would have been difficult to fit them in there. Not to spoil things too much, but in this game, not only are there 2 stories that are able to fit much easier and much more effectively, but also each character is important in their own way, which is very nice. So without further ado, let's get into that story. The game begins not with Sonic, but with Dr. Eggman infiltrating a military base to find a project developed by his grandfather, Gerald Robotnik. After wrecking house and getting deeper into the facility, he finds what he was looking for, where the project his grandfather was working on is revealed to be that of Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow then demonstrates his power by effortlessly destroying a gun mech, and promises to help with his goal of conquering the world if Eggman brings him the Chaos Emeralds and meets with him on the space colony Ark. Meanwhile, Knuckles is fighting over the Master Emerald with new character Rouge the Bat. She really likes jewels and plans on taking the emerald for herself, but in the middle of their feud, Eggman shows up and steals the emerald from both of them using a claw that, funnily enough, looks really close to the one he used in Sonic 3. Knuckles, knowing that he can't let the Master Emerald fall into the wrong hands, as well as remembering that he can just piece the thing together like a Lego set like he did in the first adventure game, decides to shatter it, and then both Knuckles and Rouge set out to collect the pieces before one another. Before you ask, we have no mention of Angel Island here, so I'll just assume it fell safely into the ocean again and that nobody cares. Meanwhile, Sonic has been arrested by the military and is aboard a helicopter he's being kept prisoner in. He makes an extremely flashy escape in one of my favorite cutscenes, and proceeds to escape from Gun chasing him down. Eggman, now inside his pyramid base, checks the news and sees that Shadow has not only stolen a Chaos Emerald, but is also evading the military whilst destroying their forces. Shadow has a flashback to a friend he had on the Ark named Maria. The cutscene cuts off before he can get the full details though, and Shadow interprets the flashback to mean he should keep his promise to his long-lost friend, and serve up revenge on all of humanity. Okay then. After fighting one of Gun's mechs, Sonic encounters Shadow, who, with his introduction, lets Sonic figure out that the military is suffering from color blindness, which is a condition that makes you think these two things are the same. Shadow then shows off the power of Chaos Control, allowing him to make his escape, and Sonic's captured again. This is one of the plot details that a lot of people have a problem with, and yeah, it is pretty idiotic that the game expects us to believe that a highly trained military force can't figure out the difference between the color blue and black, but we just gotta live with it, I guess. Anyway, Eggman and Shadow arrive on the Ark, where Shadow mentions that deadly weapons were being created on board, and makes a point of noting one in particular, the Eclipse Cannon, capable of annihilating an entire planet, with Shadow making the new goal known that to power up the Eclipse Cannon, they'd need the power of all 7 Chaos Emeralds. Now, while all this is happening, Rouge was listening in, as she's also a spy working for Gun. Now, this is something I definitely won't get annoyed by later, but for the meantime, she makes a deal with Eggman to borrow his Emerald Radar, and in exchange, she offers up a Chaos Emerald she had on her, and says she might know the location of the other emeralds. Small note here, I like how Shadow does a small nod to Eggman after Rouge offers up the emerald, basically telling him, well, now you gotta do it. And since Eggman isn't one to go against peer pressure, he takes her up on the deal. Rouge picks up the Chaos Emeralds on Prison Island, so Eggman has a simple plan: get the Chaos Emeralds, then leave this place sitting at the bottom of the ocean. Indeed, he plans to blow up the entire island. He really isn't messing around this time. Meanwhile, Amy, for some unknown reason, is on Prison Island and mistakes Shadow for Sonic, and then promptly freaks out when she realizes he obviously isn't Sonic. What could have given it away? I guess it's true what they say. Love is blind. Hey, at the very least, Shadow has no complaints. Dude looked like he was enjoying the moment. Anyway, Tails arrives just in time. He was flying here to save Sonic, but saw Amy in trouble and figured he'd help. Tails and Eggman then have a pathetic fight, and Eggman lets him go. A short while after that, Tails and Amy finally break Sonic out of prison. While all that was happening, Rouge broke into Gun's vault, not talking about it yet, and got her hands on some Chaos Emeralds. Unfortunately though, she ended up getting stuck in there and sends a distress signal. This causes Shadow to have another flashback and starts making his way over to save her. This then leads into Sonic and Shadow meeting in the forest, with one of the most iconic cutscenes I've ever seen in a video game. It's just so perfect, the witty banter, fast pace of it, Shadow's air of cockiness with Sonic being legitimately pissed off for getting framed, and on a personal note, I love how both of them jumping at the end of the cutscene perfectly transitions into the rival fight. Now, if only the rival fight was a quarter as good as the cutscene preceding it, but we're not talking about that yet. Once they finish their fight, Eggman contacts Shadow about getting a move on because the island is set to blow up soon. Sonic promptly flips out and rushes to find Tails and Amy and then book it. Shadow saves Rouge from the vault using Chaos Control, everyone gets off Prison Island, and then boom. Look, I know this island was mostly inhabited by gun robots, but you really expect me to believe the only soldier here was the one piloting Flying Dog? Yeah, no. There were bare minimum tens of casualties here. That's kinda crazy. Back aboard the Ark, while they might not have all the Chaos Emeralds, Shadow insists that they have enough for a little demonstration, so Eggman readies up and shows to the world the power of the Eclipse Cannon by destroying half the moon. Alright, here we go. Now, on its own, this moment is awesome. It establishes Eggman as more of a threat than he already was, gives you an understanding of how powerful and dangerous the Eclipse Cannon is, but man, they just did not want to follow through on this plot detail. I know this isn't SA2's fault, but as early as Shadow the Hedgehog, literally only 2 games later, there's the moon, it's perfectly fine. I'm sorry, I know this isn't a problem with this game, but it's a little bit upsetting. Sonic and the gang, meanwhile, are shocked by the moon getting obliterated, but Tails has an idea. He happens to have a Chaos Emerald on him, and since the Chaos Emeralds attract each other, he can use that power to track down Eggman. Meanwhile, after the cannon shot, Shadow says for real this time if they want to use it again, they'll need every emerald, because it'll take too much time to charge up. Eggman, however, is really upset that Rouge has been gone for a while, and is wondering why she hasn't even found the last Chaos Emerald. Luckily though, she has a lead, a newspaper article, which, While it's small, I really like this bit of continuity. Tails has the last emerald they need because he was awarded it after saving Station Square from Eggman's missile attack at the end of his story in SA1. Very nice if you ask me. In the Siggy, Tails thinks Eggman might have taken the emeralds into space, and Knuckles finally joins up with the rest of the group. If you're wondering why I haven't mentioned Knuckles since his introduction, it's because he hasn't really served much in the story up until now, and has just sort of been venturing around finding Master Emerald shards. Tails somehow finds transcripts between the President and Eggman, and thinks that if he can get into the President's limo, they can trace the call to figure out where Eggman's at, and so Tails makes chase, while nearly decapitating Knuckles. Inside the President's limo, Eggman threatens them to surrender within 24 hours or he's gonna blow the place to bits. Sonic and Tails then jump into the limo, really not helping Sonic's case of being on the run from the cops. Tails figures out Eggman's on the Ark and they get moving. Next, Team Sonic works on infiltrating Eggman's pyramid base before reaching the center.
Base?
That egghead sure loves mechanical things, doesn't he? I'll bet he has 1 or 2 spaceships lying around here somewhere.
Come on guys, I can barely see past all this foreshadowing. Knuckles hunts for keys to enter the center of the base, they gagging. Knuckles finds out Eggman has a ghost infestation. Eggman came down here for the sole purpose of calling in the Egg Golem, I guess. Sonic defeats the thing, it starts going haywire and attacks Eggman, then he defeats it, and Sonic and the gang use one of the shuttles in the pyramid to get to space. Don't make me play the cutscene again. The shuttle bumps into an asteroid, unfortunately, though, and all the Master Emerald shards were in the back, so now Knuckles has to go get them back again, while Sonic, Tails, and Amy go into the Ark. Tails then reveals he has a fake Chaos Emerald. It has the same properties as the other emeralds, only difference being that if it gets used to power the Eclipse Cannon, it'll blow the thing up. Fancy that. In another part of the Ark, Rouge uses a computer to try and get more info on Project Shadow, until she gives up a second later and decides to go get the Master Emerald pieces that fell into space. Her and Knuckles have a fight over the Emerald Shards, the two have a little moment, and Rouge decides to give Knuckles all the Emerald Shards. That wrapped itself up quick. This then lets him finally rebuild the Master Emerald. Snap back to the Ark where Eggman threatens Amy with an actual gun, and demands Sonic meet him with the Chaos Emerald. Here we've got another great scene from this game, and for this one, I don't think I can do it justice. Just take a look.
Let's take care of business first, shall we, Sonic? Hand over the Chaos Emerald, slowly, and then we'll talk about your girlfriend. That is, if you really care for her.
Handing over the fake emerald? I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Put the emerald down right there and back off.
You turned into a big-time villain, Doctor.
Whoa! You thought you could trick me with that fake emerald, didn't you?
So, how did you know it wasn't the real one?
Tails!
Because you just told me, Fox Boy.
There's a lot about this scene I find fantastic. The way Sonic enters the room, Tails nodding silently to Sonic, telling him to play along with Eggman, the absolute aggression in Eggman's voice, how Sonic confidently walks up to the center of the room before being double-crossed, and how Tails is determined to avenge Sonic after he's presumed dead. And the best part, how Eggman hardcore baits Tails into revealing that the emerald is a fake. So good. I do see how you could have a problem with Sonic using Chaos Control after only watching Shadow do it, but personally, I always thought the idea was that since he had experience with using the emeralds before this, he already has a good idea of how to harness their energy, but even excluding that, it's just such a minor problem, it doesn't affect my enjoyment of this scene. Another great addition to this is that, in the Dark story, there's an additional cutscene where Eggman detects another emerald and realizes they must have a fake, so he basically baited Tails just to rub salt in the wound. After this event, Rouge makes the decision to grab the 6 emeralds in the cannon and leave, but before she can, Shadow stops her, figuring out she's a government spy. Finally, I get to talk about this little tidbit. We have our first plot hole here, boys and girls. And before you say anything, a plot hole is a narrative inconsistency, important word, which is why I haven't mentioned it before. Eggman having a space shuttle collection in his pyramid base isn't a plot hole, it just requires you to suspend your disbelief. Gun mistaking Sonic for Shadow, because they can't see apparently, isn't a plot hole, it's just dumb storytelling. Don't make me bring out the charts again. Rouge's whole plot is inconsistent, though. Why wouldn't they just give her the emeralds when she infiltrated the gun vault on Prison Island? Was she really just willing to go through with blowing up an island of people she was probably affiliated with just to keep her cover? You know, in fact, she fought against one of the gun mechs in the vault, and it was being piloted by a gun soldier, so what was that about? I mean, Rouge was the only one in that vault, so nobody would have known if Gun just handed the emerald over, and it probably would have been a lot easier. Anyway, Sonic got Chaos controlled over to a strip of land near the Ark where Knuckles just so happened to conveniently be, and he makes haste to go get the fake emerald into the cannon. Sonic and Shadow have their final showdown, with us afterward transitioning into the final story. Yeah, sorry if that seems a little abrupt, but things kinda go differently in each story depending on if Sonic or Shadow wins their fight, and if Tails or Eggman wins their fight. No matter what happens though, Eggman gets the final emerald and places it into the cannon. Just as he does, however, a video of Gerald Robotnik appears. Rouge rushes into the room our heroes are in, saying that the Ark is crashing towards Earth, with a warning message somehow being played globally. Don't know how that happened. Eggman then enters with his grandfather's diary, and plays it for everyone to see. So back when Gerald was doing research projects on the Ark, namely developing the ultimate life form, the military stormed the facility, destroying all of Gerald's work. The Ark was then shut down under the cover of there having been an accident on board. Many people were found to be dead when the Ark was shut down, although to jump the gun a bit here, with the extra clarification given in Shadow the Hedgehog, it's more accurate to say that many of those on board were killed by the military. Among the people who died on the Ark was Maria Robotnik, the girl that Shadow developed a friendship with, as seen in his flashbacks, and more importantly, Gerald's granddaughter. After seeing that she was dead, Gerald started to go insane, which presumably led to him designing the Ark to crash into the Earth once all Chaos Emeralds were placed inside, and seeing as he designed Shadow's mind to be, in his words, perfect and pure, it implies he reprogrammed his mind to want to take revenge on the humans. With the Ark on a collision course for Earth, Eggman decides to team up with our heroes to stop it, with Knuckles and Rouge getting the idea to use the Master Emerald to stop the power of the Chaos Emeralds. I don't know why the Master Emerald is fun-sized in this cutscene, just roll with it. This then leads into the final main level of the game, Cannon's Core. And I know we haven't gotten to gameplay yet, but I just want to talk about how this is one of my favorite levels in all of Sonic. It's split between the 5 characters, and you go through it piece by piece, with each character serving their own purpose and getting to the core. It really makes you feel the gravity of the situation. There's no timer like there was for stages like Green Forest, and yet despite that, you still want to get to the end as quickly as possible because the story motivates you to do so, which in my opinion shows the writers succeeded. This culminates with the final section as Sonic. There's some high-intensity music, alarms going off, and it puts all your skills to the test. Amazing. While all that's happening, Amy ended up getting left behind, and while wandering around, ends up finding Shadow and begs him to help everyone. He initially says no because in his mind everything's going according to plan, but Amy's continued pleads triggers a flashback in Shadow, where we finally get all the details on the flashback that happened in Radical Highway, where he actually promised Maria to give peace to humanity. I actually kinda like the single tear Shadow has here. It really lets you know how much he feels like he's messed up since he's practically been doing the opposite his dead best friend wished for him to do. Sonic and Knuckles arrive in the core, but just as they do, all hell breaks loose in the form of the Bio-Lizard, the prototype of the ultimate life form. Now there's actually a nice little bit of foreshadowing with this guy. Seeing an earlier cutscene where Rouge shows up with a research article on Project Shadow, it has a picture of the Bio-Lizard on it, which is pretty cool if you ask me. There was another picture of this guy on the monitor when Rouge is looking up Dig on Project Shadow, but for some reason it was only in the Dreamcast version and was cut in later releases, which is a bit odd. Just as it appears, Shadow shows up and decides to right his wrongs and goes to battle, coming out victorious. Afterwards, Knuckles actually does the same chant here to stop the energy of the emeralds that Tikal did in SA1 to seal Chaos in the Master Emerald, which is a nice callback. Unfortunately though, nothing happens, because somehow the Biolizard used Chaos Control to merge with the space colony and continue to steer it towards Earth in a form that surely does not set up for any genital-related jokes. To stop the collision, and since the Chaos Emeralds are there already, Sonic and Shadow decide to go Super and go to battle with the Biolizard Arc Fusion, now labeled Final Hazard. Our two hedgehogs defeat the pernicious penis, but it's no use as the Arc is still headed for Earth. Our two heroes combine their powers to Chaos Control the entire colony away from Earth. Sonic's alright, but I guess Shadow was lower on rings, because afterward he falls to Earth in his final moments, happy that he finally fulfilled his promise to Maria, and dies for good. Yeah, see you next game, buddy. Sorry, I don't mean to take the piss out of this scene, I just couldn't resist. To be a bit more genuine, though, the sacrifice scene is still a really cool moment and a standout scene in the entire series. We also get a really nice cutscene after this, though, where Sonic arrives back on the Ark only having a ring left behind from Shadow. While the entire game's story had a relatively fast pace to it, this ending is actually pretty slow and down to earth, with the credits playing over the characters just talking to each other. I particularly like the part where Rouge wonders if Shadow was always meant for evil, with Sonic confidently saying that he was his own person no matter what he was made for. This just stands out to me as a good ending. The slow pace helps complement the solemn sacrifice of Shadow, and is one of the more humanizing moments for these characters in the series, as ironic as that is. It's a very memorable moment, and makes this stand out as personally one of my favorite endings in the series. I honestly really enjoy this game's story. I definitely find it to be more engaging than Adventure 1 since it cuts out any filler and has a much better narrative flow. I also like how they incorporate the different character perspectives into the story in this game, albeit with a different spin on it. If you remember when I talked about SA1, I mentioned that depending on the character you were playing as, the cadence of a character would switch up a bit, like how Eggman was a little more threatening in Tails' story. Well, in this game we get a different take on this. Since obviously the game has our hero and dark stories, we get different perspectives on the same events depending on which story we're currently going through. For example, the moon being blown in half. Obviously for the heroes this is a big deal and makes it seem like Eggman's really starting to one-up you. On the dark story though, like they care. The most excited they get over the event is Rouge nonchalantly saying, "So does this mean we've won yet, or what?" Or when in the hero story, we obviously assume Eggman baited Tails into revealing the emerald he had was a fake, but in the dark story we find out he actually knew about the fake emerald the whole time. It's pretty cool. Another thing I like about the story is how much it contributes to the lore of Sonic as a whole, which has spawned a ton of theories and speculations surrounding it. One of the theories I bought into is Gerald potentially taking inspiration from the ancient echidnas when creating Shadow, with how Shadow's spikes look similar to Supersonic's, calling back to the mural in Hidden Palace from Sonic 3, or how when you go through Sonic's portion of Canon's core, right at the end there's these water slides with architecture that is basically one for one with how Lost World looked in Adventure. Well, we just spent a long while talking about story, but there is a good game in this, video game. Sonic Adventure 2 has a hero and dark story where you play as 3 characters in each. Thankfully, though, we don't have another 6 gameplay styles to go through. Instead, each set of 3 characters has the same 3 gameplay styles, and we can already see some very sizable fat being trimmed. All 3 playstyles are returning from Adventure 1. We have our action stages with Sonic and Shadow, our treasure hunting stages with Knuckles and Rouge, and our mech shooting stages with Tails and Eggman. Whoa, wait a second. Did I just say Tails is in a mech? Okay, it's not that drastic. In fact, I'm kind of happy about this. If you remember when I talked about Adventure 1, my favorite playstyles were the action, hunting, and shooting stages, and how about that? Those are the 3 playstyles that return here. To run down each of the characters, Sonic and Shadow play basically just like you'd expect. Control, homing attack, spin dash, all of which feel just as good as they did in the first game. Both characters can now do the somersault, which is mainly used for breaking boxes in the way and getting under tight areas. Upgrades, of course, are also back, which moves on to another big change. No hub worlds. Now you just go from stage to stage. Personally, I didn't mind the hub worlds, but I do generally prefer going stage to stage like this in Sonic games, so it's not a huge loss. Because of this, now you'll find upgrades in the levels. Usually they're on the main path if you need them to progress, but if you don't, they'll usually be hidden somewhere. And I actually really like this approach and found it fun to look around for the extra upgrades I needed. To go through them, the Lightspeed Dash is back, and wow, what an improvement. They only made one change, no more charge up, and now it's one of my favorite moves to use. The Ancient Light is also back, and it still sucks as much as it did before, since it still needs to be charged and can barely even function, and more often causes you to go ballistic, so let's not talk about it. There's the Flame Ring, which turns your somersault on fire and allows you to break through metal boxes. And finally, a new move, the Mystic Melody, which you play at these altars and it can do anything, ranging from making platforms to creating a warp ball. Everyone gets this one, interestingly enough. That's all the upgrades Shadow gets, but for some reason Sonic gets 2 exclusive ones. First there's the Bounce Bracelet, allowing you to bounce around and gain height, which I really like. I was always confused as to why Shadow never got this one. Then finally there's the Magic Hands, which turn enemies into figurines. It's super useless, and I'm not sure if it has any point at all, so let's move on. The upgrades are all really solid this time around, although they all do suffer from same button syndrome, where all of these moves are binded to one action button, and man, the amount of times I've done a somersault when I meant to Lightspeed Dash is kind of annoying, and can kinda lead to death if close to a pit. Next, Tails and Eggman are pretty similar to Gamma. Although they control a lot slower, it definitely feels like you're piloting a giant mech, as opposed to Gamma, who was a smaller robot. It has a learning curve and it isn't going to feel as natural as Gamma did, but it's not awful and works pretty good when you get a feel for it. You just gotta give it a second. Overall, the stages are about what you'd expect coming off of Gamma's gameplay, although I did notice a bit more platforming than Gamma had, probably to compensate for the lesser speed. The combo system of killing a lot of enemies in one lock-on that Gamma had also returns. However, since stages no longer have a short time limit, it's instead used for points. The larger amount of enemies you kill in one burst, the more points you'll get, and you'll want to do this to feed into the new ranking system the game has that I'll go into later. Upgrades for the mechs are also relatively the same. The Hover and Laser Blaster come back and work the same, although the Hover is even more useful than it already was in the first game. We have the Bazooka, which allows your shots to break metal boxes, and only for Eggman there's the Protection Armor, which gives you more health. That's it though, not a ton of cool new abilities like Sonic and Shadow, which is a bit disappointing, but I guess there wasn't a ton of new upgrades they could have made for them. Finally, we have our treasure hunting characters, Knuckles and Rouge. Similar to the mech characters, they also seem to get some changes that people aren't super fond of, those mainly being the fact that your radar not only picks up one emerald piece near you instead of all of them, and that the hint system was completely changed. Out of the two, I actually do agree with the emerald radar issue. Now, I did say in Adventure 1 that being able to detect all the emeralds at once sometimes made things too easy, as you'd spawn in and sometimes already be in close proximity to multiple emeralds. The difference here, though, is that the treasure hunting levels in SA2 are a lot bigger than they were in Adventure 1, meaning that it can sometimes make these cumbersome, so I actually would have preferred being able to detect all the emeralds here. As for the hint system, I actually don't mind this change. In the adventure video, I also mentioned that the hint system of Tikal flying to where one of the emeralds was made things really easy. So now in Adventure 2, it was changed to where there are hint monitors scattered throughout the levels that will give you an idea of where the emerald pieces could be located. In Adventure 1, Tikal felt like she was directly pointing you where to find the next emerald, whereas here it feels like it's actually giving me a hint, just a clue as to where it could be located while allowing me to work out the rest. if you feel like it, you can even go to the hint monitors multiple times for the same emerald and get more specific hints for it. I really like this change. As for upgrades, we only have the Shovel Claw returning, which I'm happy about, since I thought digging for emeralds made for a nice change of pace, and because the fighting gloves kind of sucked. They even made the digging itself a lot easier, since you now either drill into the ground by attacking in midair, or you dig into walls by hitting the action button while on a wall. Much better. The only other upgrades there are the Hammer Gloves for Knuckles and the Iron Boots for Rouge, which let you break metal crates, as well as the Sunglasses for Knuckles and the Treasure Scope for Rouge, both filling the same purpose of letting you see invisible objects. What sucks though is that they get taken off when you jump, which not only makes them a little awkward, it's also a shame, because I think they both look pretty cool on both Knuckles and Rouge. Oh right, there's also one last upgrade exclusively for Knuckles, the dreaded Air Necklace. It seems pretty good. It lets you breathe underwater, so what's the issue? Well, in Knuckles' section of Canon's core, most of it takes place underwater, which means you either get the Air Necklace or you'll be fighting to survive. The problem is that this upgrade isn't shoved in your face like the Lightspeed Dash, Bazooka, or even Shovel Claw are, so it's not guaranteed you'll pick it up while playing through the game. There's also another big change in this game. Each character has completely unique stages. I mean, sure, there might be some overlap in level themes. Radical Highway and Mission Streets look pretty similar, for example, but they both have unique level design, which gets rid of another problem I had in SA1. Now, since everyone has levels specifically for them, it can better complement their gameplay styles and not have to worry about making level design work for multiple characters in some cases. We don't gotta worry about Crazy Gadget working for Tails because only Sonic goes through it, so we can cater it specifically to him. Also, this is a small change, but it's something I really enjoy. Every stage feels like it fills a narrative purpose in this game. Now, Adventure 1 did do this somewhat, but every so often, there'd be a stage that you run through just for the sake of it. Meanwhile, everything you do in SA2 feels like it has significance. Iron Gate, get through the military to find Shadow. City Escape, get away from the military chasing you. Crazy Gadget, Eggman's holding Amy hostage, better get over there quickly. This also goes for all the Knuckles and Rouge levels, albeit to a simpler extent, since all the levels contribute to the goal of rebuilding the Master Emerald. It makes all the levels feel like they have significance. For comparison, let's look at a not good game, Sonic Forces. This game can sometimes do it, like Spaceport. We need to go save Sonic, so go get a space shuttle in Chemical Plant for some reason. But the rest of the game feels like random chores that just happen to let us get to the end. Like, hey, let's go find Shadow, who's standing in this city for some reason. Shut down the weapons factory, shut down the Death Egg's weapons. Go fight in the city, except we suck at our job, so this whole level actually just harmed us. Although to be fair, these levels aren't unmemorable only because they lack major significance, it's also because they're designed extremely lazily, but the point still stands. Anyway, this isn't a Forces review, but it does a good job showing what SA2 got right. Although, even without that extra dash of plot relevance, these stages would all be memorable anyway because they're some of the most fun and well-designed levels in the series. Everyone talks about City Escape, and for good reason, it's incredible, but I find Radical Highway does a lot of what City Escape does just as good in my opinion. A lot of people are a bit mixed on Crazy Gadget's gravity-changing gimmick, but personally I find it to also be really fun, barring the last part where things get pretty jank. I find all of Sonic and Shadow stages to be incredible, but my favorite is probably Final Rush. It really makes the most of the grind rails and offers a lot of pathways that you could take, as well as allowing you to experiment to find the fastest set of paths to get to the end. The mech levels are also a lot better than people give them credit for. A lot of distaste seems to be thrown at the sand levels because hitting the sand means instant death, but barring some minor instances of enemy placement ruining things, these aren't that bad. You just need to practice patience and going for jumps, and it'll go pretty smoothly. The gun stages are pretty good openers for both stories, but my favorite mech stage is easily Cosmic Wall. Being in space gives you really big jumps, and your hover now gives you lift, which not only lets the level design be more creative, but it's also just fun to control. The treasure hunting levels have the only stages I consider bad, those being Aquatic Mine, Death Chamber, Egg Quarters, and Mad Space. Especially Mad Space. Aquatic Mine's main problem is that there's these small little paths to the side of the main area, which means a lot of the time I'll have my radar going off, but it'll be in a room right on the opposite side of the wall I'm on, which will make me have to figure out how to get to the room I want, and it's minorly annoying. Probably the least bad stage out of the 4. Death Chamber and Egg Quarters have much of the same problem, being very boxed in, with your only saving grace being that the main rooms are color-coded. Egg Quarters is slightly better than Death Chamber since its design is slightly more linear, making it easier to cross off rooms you've already checked. But still, I generally think treasure hunting stages are best when they're more wide open, which I know is hilarious for me to say since I'm about to start ranting about Mad Space. I hate Mad Space. It's a bunch of planets floating in this giant area. The gravity mechanics, well, it's no Mario Galaxy, that's for sure. It's a mystery how this stuff works. It's only made more confusing since some planets let you jump off to other ones, and some planets keep you fixed onto them. And if that's the case, it's a puzzle figuring out how to get off. Not to mention, the hints the game gives you in the space levels are completely ruined, with the first hint being written in reverse, and the other two telling you the opposite of where you should go. It's just not a fun level. If you were expecting me to mention Meteor Herd or Security Hall, well, no, I find both of these stages to be fine. In fact, Meteor Herd is probably one of my favorite hunting stages. It's big, but not as bad as Mad Space, since most of the level's size is vertical and slightly separated into tiers, with the bottom area being with the tower, the middle area with the boxes and platforms flying about, and then the top building. Security Hall isn't bad either. In fact, I'll go as far to say that the time limit helps the stage since it's pretty small in comparison to the others, only having this bottom and top area that have short left and right paths. So yeah, with the exceptions I mentioned in the treasure hunting stages, this game's lineup is really solid. However, I do have a general complaint with the level design. There are a lot of occasions where they just drop an enemy on you to take you by surprise. I mean, sure, I know where most of these guys are dropping from, but that's only because I've played this game so many times I know where they are. A first-time player is probably gonna get hit in all of these instances. In the worst case, we have this robot here in Hidden Base that always manages to blindside me, and getting hit by this one means instant death, since the knockback is gonna make you fall into the sand. It's objectively horrible design. There was also another addition to the stages, that being the ranking system. Now, Adventure 1 technically had a ranking system, but not in the traditional sense. It was more like extra missions that were their own separate thing. This game establishes the ranking system Sonic games are still using today. Based on your score, you'll be ranked A through E, and getting the best rank means collecting a ton of rings, killing a ton of enemies, and doing it fast and without dying. On top of that, you'll also probably want to do extra stuff in levels that give you point bonuses, like getting emeralds as fast as possible in the treasure hunting stages for a big bonus, or getting to the top of the shuttle in Metal Harbor for some extra pointage. I find SA2 to be one of the harder games to get all A ranks in, especially in the mech stages, since they have giant point requirements for an A rank, but it does add an extra layer of depth to playing these stages, and I'm happy it's here. So the levels have been massively upgraded, but were the bosses? Okay, so we still have our two different kinds of bosses, those being rival fights and full-on boss battles. Rival fights are better than Adventure 1 on technicality, but they're still laughable. The fights between Tails and Eggman are a war of attrition, and in the second fight's case, really annoying since your opponent can spam their super moves. Sonic and Shadows both feel like you bumbling around until you get lucky and happen to hit each other, and I really don't care for the final Sonic and Shadow fight as much as everyone else seems to. Knuckles and Rouge only get one fight, strangely enough, but I'm happy they do, because their fight is a mess where you spend more time searching for one another and fighting the camera than you do fighting each other. Full-on boss battles are a bit scattered, and overall the lineup ain't too great, but there are some highlights here. The fight against Bigfoot as Sonic isn't anything special, but it is pretty memorable and great at opening the hero story. Then there's also King Boom Boo as Knuckles and the Egg Golem as Sonic, both fights I genuinely enjoy coming back to and make for some great encounters. The Dark Story really got it rough in terms of bosses though. There's Hotshot and Flying Dog, both of which I find to be not as fun versions of the Bigfoot boss. Then Egg Golem as Eggman completely butchers everything that made the Sonic version of the fight fun, making the battle a lot slower paced and having the sand at the bottom insta-kill you instead of acting as a safety net like it should. Then we have the two final bosses, and you know what? The Bio-Lizard is easily the most fun boss in the game for me. It's the only one that puts up a decent fight and forces you to stay on your toes and navigate appropriately to dodge attacks and not fall in the water gaps, while at the same time not punishing you too heavily by giving you a brief window to jump out of the water. I'm not sure why people don't talk about this boss as much, because aside from being a really cool story moment, the boss lives up to expectations well, which is more than I can say for the final boss. Final Hazard kind of undervalues how good the ending is. You have this incredible setup, the tensions are rising higher than ever, Cannon's Core and the Bio-Lizard got you hyped up for the grand finale, and we get quite possibly one of the worst and most annoying Sonic bosses ever. It feels luck-based at times, getting just the right route to hit the boss, and as such I either get through this effortlessly or after like 5 tries. I don't like this one. Sonic Adventure 2 is a pretty standout game in one other category, and that's extra stuff. There's a lot of extra content for you to experience after the game ends, so let's get into it. The first thing to mention is that emblems are back, and there's a whole lot more of them too. While Adventure 1 had 130 emblems to collect, Adventure 2 has a whopping 180 emblems, so needless to say, if you decide to go for 100%, you'll be here a while. First, let's go through the side modes. We have the Boss Rush Time Attack deal, which is pretty fun, and trying to get through the bosses as fast as possible makes the mediocre bosses more fun, and the bad bosses all the more horrible. There's also this kart racing mode. Yeah, there were 2 of these driving stages in the game, and I guess they felt like making it into an entire thing. Nothing much to say here, though. I mean, you can unlock Egg Robo by clearing all of Rouge's missions. That's a neat little nod to Sonic R. I guess. That's all I got. Speaking of which, the missions from Adventure 1 return as well, and instead of there being 3 per stage, there's now 5. They usually have stuff like find the lost Chao, get 100 rings, beat the stage in hard mode, etc. But regardless, they're pretty fun. I also like how for stuff like the ring mission, it ends as soon as you get the 100 rings instead of forcing you to get to the end like Adventure 1 did. There's also the infamous missions in the driving stages of getting to the end without hitting any cars, and getting to the end without hitting any walls, and honestly, I didn't find these that bad. You just need to practice caution and it'll end easy. I don't know where all the commotion comes from. There might be more missions to go through here than Adventure 1, but despite that, I actually find these to be less tedious, which might have something to do with the stages being more consistently fun. I'll go through 5 times the missions as long as none of them involve fishing. Another prerequisite is getting the A ranks on every stage in a mission, which, yeah, depending on what you're doing, can be kinda painful. The final bit of stuff to check off involves the new and improved Chao Garden. Remember when I said I didn't spend much time in the Chao Garden in Adventure 1? Yeah, that's because all that time was poured into this. I used to spend hours, days even, trying to make a Chao that was as good as possible for these competitions, and man, it's some pretty deep stuff. I'm gonna rant about this for a bit. Chao have multiple different phases to their lifespan, starting off as a child and then growing as time passes. Depending on the most buff stat they have, they can grow up to be really proficient in that stat, but you can only raise their stats by getting chaos drives and animals from defeated robots in stages. What they evolve into also depends on their alignment. If you take care of them with a hero or dark character, then they'll become a hero or dark Chao respectively. Alternatively, you can raise them with a mix of the two to make a neutral Chao. After this, they can evolve a second time, however, whether this goes well or not depends on if their invisible happiness stat is high, which is pretty simple and just involves you taking good care of them and not treating them like a new soccer ball. If they're unhappy, then congratulations, you're the scum of the earth, and will be rewarded by them going into a white cocoon and dying. If you're a decent human being, then your Chao will be happy enough to go into a pink cocoon and advance to their second phase of life. If your Chao is really proficient in certain stats, then you can put them in Chao races and Chao karate, and winning these will get you the last few emblems you need. But man, there's a ton of stuff I haven't even touched on. Things like rare Chao forms, like the elusive Chaos Chao. You get one by giving a single Chao one of every animal. There's Chao based on characters like Sonic and Shadow, and even ones based on Knights and Riala from the Knights games also made by Sonic Team. There's also these super rare character Chao like the Tails one. You could only get this on the GameCube version of SA2 if you owned Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2, and then completing a quest in the game that allowed you to get a Game Boy Advance link cable to transfer the Tails Chao to your Game Boy Advance's Tiny Chao Garden, and then use that to transfer it over to SA2 Dear God. To go even further, there's the Amy and Knuckles Chao, who have no legitimate way to obtain anymore, period. This stuff gets crazy. I'm gonna be honest, I could talk about the Chao Garden in SA2 for hours, but this video is already getting long enough as it is, and we've got other stuff to talk about. The point being, the Chao Garden is a really fun time. Although while the mechanics are super interesting and cool to me, I don't exactly find grinding through levels to boost your Chao's stats to be a super fun time. It is an iconic part of this game for a reason though, and a ton of people, including myself, are still waiting for it to come back someday. Now, emblems used to unlock additional stuff for the multiplayer in the Dreamcast version, but with SA2 Battle, a lot of stuff is unlocked by default, which I think is a lot better considering if you want to play this game with a friend, you probably don't want to go through the process of 100%ing the game just to have all the content. You know what, let's talk about the multiplayer a quick second. It's easily the best multiplayer the series has seen, where you either get to get Emerald Shards the fastest, kill each other in mechs, or race to the ending action stages, my personal favorite. There's even some exclusive characters to play as. The races have Metal Sonic and Amy, the mechs have Normal and Dark Chao, and the treasure hunting stages have Tikal and Chaos, which is awesome, and they all have unique abilities and attributes to make you want to play as each one. The only thing that sucks is that these guys are all exclusive to multiplayer. Since they don't function too differently from the base characters, I think it wouldn't have hurt if they changed it in SA2 Battle to allow you to play as these guys by collecting enough emblems. SA2 always had the best multiplayer, and thankfully I got some assistance for it from my sister, and it was great doing stuff like finding out Tails' alternate costume can fly at Mach 10 before falling to my death, and watching her struggle to comprehend reality in Final Rush. Still didn't stop me from somehow getting beat in White Jungle. If you got some pals that are into Sonic, this is still a surprisingly great time. Sure beats Sonic Shuffle anyway. Alright, so with that, what do you get for collecting all the emblems? Yup, that's right, you unlock a 3D version of Green Hill Zone, and I know nowadays this stage has been done to death, but back then this was a really cool bonus for collecting everything. That being said, unfortunately, I still don't think it's worth all the trouble. Just like Metal Sonic and Adventure 1. It isn't as bad here because at least the process of getting 100% is more fun, but still, I think a little more could have been done, and to some extent, SADX was better about rewarding you because that game gave you a bunch of Game Gear games for getting emblems. Now, we only have a few things left to go through here. We got music and version differences to tackle, and then we'll wrap this up. This game's music is really good, definitely a standout OST, at least in my opinion, filled with a lot of iconic tracks. This game does focus a lot on rock, all the Sonic, Shadow, Tails, and Eggman stages are filled with them, so if you don't like that, sad to say there isn't going to be much for you here, but personally, I love rock, and as such, there's a lot in here I like. Live and Learn and City Escape are of course tracks that everyone's minds go to when they think of Adventure 2, but there's a lot of other good tracks, like all three Cannon's core themes, the gun boss battle music, Cosmic Wall, Green Forest, and White Jungle. We also have Knuckles and Rouge's tracks that both have completely different styles to them. Out of the two, Rouge is my favorite, having some very nice jazz pieces that make for some great background noise while making videos and the like. Meanwhile, Knuckles has these extremely corny rap songs that are so bad they wrap back around to being brilliant, and at this point I can't tell if my love for them is ironic or not. I mean, have you seen some of the lyrics in these? They start to make me think I'm the insane one. While I will concede Adventure 1 has much better variety, I generally like a lot more tracks in Adventure 2, and a lot more of them stick out in my mind. Now let's talk versions. This game came out on Dreamcast, GameCube, and had an HD remaster on Xbox 360, PS3, and Steam. And of these, I mainly want to highlight the GameCube and HD versions. I originally wasn't going to bring this up, but recently, and by recently I mean last July when I was prepping for this video, I decided as a fun little collecting thing to pick up the GameCube version of SA2 Battle, and I actually noticed a lot of little things that were different enough to be worth a mention. First, let's talk audio mixing. It gets a pretty bad rap in every version, mainly with cutscene music drowning out the characters' voices. However, I actually find it to be more egregious in the gameplay of the HD version. The beeping of the mech's lasers, and especially when you collect a large sum of rings at once, has the sound effects be way too loud to where it becomes ear-grating. Here's a quick comparison for reference. This is the GameCube version. And this is the HD version. On top of that, I also noticed less small graphical errors on the GameCube version as opposed to the HD version. In the HD version's favor, though, a lot of text was changed to be more appealing, and by that I mean the GameCube version unapologetically plastered Comic Sans all over the place, and the HD version cleans a lot of it up. On top of that, it also has slightly faster load times from what I've noticed. Overall, it comes down to personal preference, although I do find the HD version more convenient, since I'm more likely to boot up my Xbox One as opposed to my GameCube. I do like not having my ears bleeding though, so the GameCube version does win in that category. So yeah, that's Sonic Adventure 2, and if it isn't clear by how I've been gushing about, and even to some extent defending this game, I absolutely love it. It took a while for me to finally appreciate it, but I did come around, and now it's probably one of my favorite games of all time, and easily one of my favorite Sonic games. It's almost an entirely different case from Adventure 1, really. That game, I concluded, could only be best enjoyed by a predisposed fan of Sonic, but Adventure 2 is a game that I think can be enjoyed by not just Sonic fans, but platformer and video game fans as a whole. I'd even argue looking back on this game gave me more of an appreciation for it than ever, and it really shows a lot of qualities that I hope will come back in a new Sonic game. An exuberant story, good gameplay, enjoyable side modes, and an emphasis on fun. And that's what SA2 is to me, fun. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I did making it. God knows this one took a long time to get finished. What was that, almost a year at this point? Go play Sonic Adventure 2, take care, and I will see you all later.